Okay, good afternoon. We'll call the March Diversion Authority Planning Committee to order. The first order of business is call of the roll, and I believe Dawn is on the line.
Yep. Mayor Mahoney.
Here.
Mayor Carlson.
Here.
Mayor Durdes.
Here.
Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mr. Grinberg.
Here.
And Mr. Steen. Quorum is present.
Thank you, Dawn. Next, I'd look for a motion to approve the minutes from February 11th, 2025.
So move.
Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next up, approve the order of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 4, global program and O&M discussion. Jason Benson. And before Jason starts, just to note, Commissioner Campbell will take over as chair, as I'm going to have to leave about 5 minutes to 1.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. Just want to give an update on some of the activities as we move forward with our O&M process. So the team has already started what's called the SAMP, the Strategic Asset Management Plan, and evaluating a large number of components. You know, of course, we have to evaluate everything from, people, facilities, equipment, training, the O&M manuals, the turnover process, everything from the main components that we'll have to maintain right away as we get them turned over on the southern embankment, the inspection processes with the P3 contractor for the diversion channel for that 30-year O&M period, and then the transition after that. The in-town components, having discussions with City of Fargo, City of Moorhead, the counties. So all of that goes into, what we have to ultimately come to a conclusion with as we move from the construction phase of this project to the O&M phase. And of course, it's going to be multiple transitions. We know that there's some initial transitions that'll happen, have already happened with, the initial southern embankment component that was completed and turned over. So we're going to continue to have those elements turned over, things like mowing, determining what's going to be contracted out versus when do we buy equipment and hire people to do. And then bigger components, we expect later this summer and fall that the Corps will start moving towards transferring the inlet control structure and wild rice control structure to us. So all of those things have to go into the strategic, the SAMP, the Strategic Asset Management Plan. And so again, I'm just starting to dive into that. Doing some internal meetings to get caught up on what the team's already been discussing, and expecting that over the next 30 to 60 days, we're going to continue to refine those plans, especially timeline-wise, as to, because we know there's certain critical timeline events, again, when we expect certain components of the project to be turned over, when we expect our new diversion authority building down on the southern embankment off of County Road 14 and 45th Street, when that'll be complete. So there's certain things that we've got as kind of good lines in the sand for different transition points, and what else we have to do to get to those transition points, which also ultimately leads to what's the financial and fiscal budget year to year as we transition this O&M and what those costs are, again, whether it's contracting, whether it's personnel, equipment. So with that was my update. Open to any questions that people may have.
Questions for Jason? Commissioner Campbell?
Thank you. This is good news that you're working on this, and I know you've got your internal team working on it, and I'm wondering about when the conversation is going to include external folks. I don't know if like Dr. Zimmerman is part of it now, or if our county engineer is involved with it, or if the Buffalo Red engineers are involved with it, to all kind of understand what this is going to be, because ultimately there's going to be some sort of component of financial involvement on O&M from the Minnesota side as well, and to try to start to work that out. And because then we're also going to, I know the city has a resource for, getting their share, but from the county standpoint, we need to know, are we going to end up wanting to work with the watershed to establish that O&M district on our side to help be able to gain those finances to help with the, certainly we're not looking to the state of Minnesota for that piece of it. That part, we understand the O&M is kind of on us. So, but having that dialogue and putting that map together, I think, is really important.
Yeah, thanks. Right now, I know we have been collecting information and having discussions with the city engineering staff on what those different O&M costs are, the number of assets. So I think if those discussions haven't included Justin, your county engineer, they definitely will. So those are both on the Clay County and Cass County side. As we gather, it's really gathering all the facts, making sure that we validate assumptions and that we're not going off of false assumptions when it comes to different assets that are different entities owned that we'll be managing.
Mayor Mahoney?
So Kevin, are you talking about a drain tax ultimately? Because we're talking about on a Cass County that a drain tax would eventually go in for an O&M.
Well, I mean,
Can Minnesota do the same thing?
This is something that, and we'll have to have a dialogue with the city too. I know that, the city can probably incorporate that into their utility bill, I think is an option that could be there. But another option would be is we could look to the watershed, for example, to create a district. And through that district that they could create, there could be some O&M processes being done that way. And, that's what I'm saying. There's different options out there, but, the sooner we can kind of start discussing those, the better we're going to be.
Mayor Carlson?
Yeah, the city, in order to pay for the flood mitigation projects that have occurred within the city, had added a wastewater tax onto every individual's bill within the city of Moorhead. That's how we've been able to get the funding to be the match for the projects that we've been able to secure from the state. With O&M, I would anticipate that would continue. I'm not sure what the level would be. I would need to talk to the engineering staff to find that out. But with the district, the county and the city are going to need to have a conversation because we don't want the citizens in the city to be double taxed for two projects, ones that are outside of the city limits and in addition to the ones in the city. So the district would have to not maybe include the city of Moorhead, but for future discussion.
All right, thank you.
Chris, FEMA update?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Grimberg, committee members. As you guys are probably aware, we did have our biannual meeting with our agency partners related to the floodplain remapping last week. We did have representatives from both states of North Dakota, Minnesota, and then our federal partners, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and FEMA in town as well. We had 2 days of pretty intense meetings, mostly technical stuff. Maybe just a couple things to highlight. You may hear a slightly different term being used related to the mapping process. FEMA has, and this is a little bit new to me too, but I'm getting myself up to speed on it. They have the typical, we hear the word LOMR used a lot. That's letter of map revision. They also have what they call a PMR process of physical map revision. Probably a subtle nuance to us. It accomplishes the same goal inside FEMA. It's a little bit different of how they do their reviews. They've determined the best course of action for our project is to actually do a physical map revision, so you'll likely hear that term used more often now. Again, at the end of the day, it's an issuance of a new set of maps, which is what we would have had under either case. But just if you hear that term used, it's nothing crazy or anything way different. It's just two slightly different processes that FEMA uses, and with the scope and scale of our project, I think is really the most of what I heard that led them down that path, that there's so many map panels that need to be updated with a project of our size that their process to do the actual physical map revision made more sense. So you may hear that term used more, and like I said, we can fill you in more as time goes on any other subtleties, but according to what we heard from the federal reps, this is just actually a more efficient process for them, given the number of panels and things that have to be updated. And then, we spent most of our time talking about modeling, and I know there's an agenda item coming up on the board this month, so I just wanted to kind of highlight what we talked about and kind of what we're doing with the modeling to help advance schedules. As we looked at things, and I think we highlighted this a little bit after our last fall meeting, but confirmed it here this spring, the best course of action for us to keep things advancing is to advance the modeling, because that's the biggest lift on the project. So what our team right now is working on is advancing the modeling to get it to a point where we can submit that to our agency partners by later this year. And then they will take time throughout next year while we're actually finishing construction, doing the modeling. Typically that all would start post-construction. So I think as you look at the agenda item we have coming up this month later, and if you want to chat through that at all today, I think Jason and I are prepared to do that. But just to give you a highlight, we're advancing some work that we thought wasn't going to start until into 27. We're doing that work now to advance the schedule with FEMA. So we're asking to pull some of that funding from the 27 timeframe up into the current mode. And again, we talked about several different paths to accomplish the steady progress of this, and really advancing the modeling became the most critical factor for us. So that's why we're advancing that. So happy to answer any questions you have related to that. But those are kind of the two highlights of what we confirmed in the meeting, and there was lots of other technical discussions that I'm happy to go through with you guys, but I think those are probably the two main ones for me that I think is worth probably bringing to highlight back to you guys. So, and I know Commissioner Grimberg, you met with FEMA too, so if there's anything you wanted to highlight from our meeting with them, Mayor Mahoney, I guess you had met with them quick too that day, so if there's anything you guys have for questions or that I missed, just please let me know.
Commissioner Campbell.
Yeah, just a question going back to your, the physical map revision. Who sets the boundaries of what that's going to be? Is that at our request, or does FEMA set those boundaries?
So that's an iterative process, as most are. We've started discussions with what those boundaries are. We obviously had boundaries that were set when we did the Clomer as well. We're starting from that point. We're then evaluating where the modeling has progressed to. Again, a lot of that is just a debate over kind of where the impacts of the project start to lessen. So we did have some discussions this past week about the tie-ins of the whole map revision boundary. That's still an ongoing discussion, but that will be an iterative process that we have back and forth with data that we produce through the modeling and working with the federal and state reps to determine the appropriate places to kind of cut off that map line between where we're making changes and where we're not. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, to piggyback on Chris's point, complimented, my thoughts, at least to FEMA, about fast tracking some of this. A year ago, it was pretty much looked like a longer delay, not a delay, but a longer process. So that was encouraging. I had just returned from the National Association of Counties Legislative Conference, and there was a presentation on FEMA. And as I think we're all aware of, Washington, D.C. is an interesting environment right now with all the change. One of the items in a presentation was President Trump is forming a FEMA Review Advisory Council. And I shared with the FEMA lead that given the attention on this project as being the first in the nation, the Corps wants to make sure this is successful from a U.S. Army Corps perspective. Equally, we could have that as a premier model for FEMA as well. And so whatever we can do to continue to advocate on the uniqueness of this project and the success will strengthen FEMA's, stature, if I can use that word. Additionally, President Trump is asking to name a 21-member council, and later this week I'll be signing letters to our congressional delegation recommending Jason Benson serve and represent our region and our area as a member of that council. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses. Mayor Carlson, did you have a question?
I did.
Okay. Your comments or questions for Chris?
Are you aware of the correspondence that FEMA sent out last week to mayors and elected leaders?
I don't know that I've seen that yet, Mayor.
It's a 4-page. I turned it over to engineering right away in our city, but they had a lot of questions and deadlines on there where we had to respond with regard to some of the mapping.
Okay.
So.
Now that may have been related to the Western
could
cast
very
because
well
there's a couple of things going on now. I know they did let us know last week that I believe the issue date for, or the notice date for the Western cast floodplain update happened last week. So that may have been the letters that you guys received. My guess is that's what it was for, Mayor. I don't believe they've sent any letters out related to our project remapping at all. And I don't know, Jason, if you have anything to add to that, but I think that's probably what those were related to, Mayor.
I haven't heard either, but I think you're right, Chris, in that, because that announcement last week started the 6-month countdown to when the maps will go into effect for the Western cast, which, again, people think Western cast, it must be all the way Tower City. It's actually everything, including West Fargo. So it's just west of the Red River.
Yeah, I didn't receive anything, so.
That would indicate that probably was that study. I know they had said their schedule is to have those maps effective by sometime in September. So.
Well, I'm certainly happy that Mayor Carlson is going to help us on our mapping. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other comments for Chris? Okay, we'll move along. Next item, Washington, D.C. trip update. Jason Benson.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we got back from a very eventful and successful 2-day trip out to Washington, D.C. Commissioner Grimberg, myself, Martin Nicholson, and John Shockley traveled out there to meet with the congressional delegations to provide an update regarding the project, and as well as introducing me as the new executive director. We provided a project overview to Representative Fedorchak to get her up to speed on the project. So just a great discussion with her, and and being new to the position and getting her a little more up to speed with all things going on with the diversion. We also had the opportunity to meet with Senator Hoeven, Senator Kramer, and Representative Fischbach directly, and then with the staff of Senator Tina Smith. So really constructive legislative meetings with the congressional delegations, and again, providing where we're at, the amount of construction that's happened, as well as the critical construction components that are going to happen in 2025 with a lot of the bridge work, the continued work on the Red River structure, and other elements. From there, we did discuss the need to maintain the tax-exempt status of interest earned on municipal bonds related to anticipated issuance of 2 bonds that we've got going on for the project and it's anticipated that will occur in or near the time of substantial completion of the project. So there has been some talk legislatively out there of reducing the ability to have tax-exempt bonds, and that would definitely hurt our bonding. We discussed the project process of the Southern Embankment, everything with the federal funding, as well as what the Corps of Engineers is doing, and the fact that just over the last couple of months they've completed the final contracting and awarded and contracted all the components of the southern embankment. So we're really moving forward in a great process and progress with the southern embankment. We also talked a lot on the project partnership agreement and federal appropriations. Again, thanking them for the $750 million that has been appropriated. And then lastly, we did get over to the Pentagon to meet with Ms. Stacy Brown. She's the acting principal deputy of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. So there's several different assistant secretaries of the Army. The one for Civil Works is who the Corps of Engineers falls under, and these large projects like ours fall under. So we had a great meeting with her, discussed the status of the project. Again, thanked her for all the hard work that the Corps of Engineers has done on the project, as well as discussion on federal funding in the PPA. Again, just a great meeting, set of meetings. And then I'll end with, just timing wise, we got very fortunate. Tracy Sutton, who's a longtime staffer for Congress out in Washington, D.C. She had over 25 years of staff work. She worked for Congressman Pomeroy, Senator Conrad, and Senator Heitkamp. Very influential. So I think she worked between 15 and 20 years with those three on a lot of infrastructure projects, specifically water infrastructure projects in North Dakota. So we had the opportunity to be at her retirement event and thank her for all she had done for North Dakota and to support the citizens of North Dakota in her time working for the North Dakota delegations. So, Commissioner, if you have any other comments?
Just to add, Jason and the team provided a small acrylic gift with an emblem, our emblem with a diversion, and presented that to her at her retirement party. And she was instrumental in a lot of the early work on this project on behalf of Senator Conrad. So, very well done.
All right. Well, that's my update. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions.
Any questions? I'm going to turn the rest over to Commissioner Campbell and then head out for my mobile office call and venture to Bismarck for meetings this afternoon and tomorrow morning. Commissioner Campbell?
All right, thank you. Next item is Minnesota funding update. Maybe you can start with Mayor Carlson. Do you want to give an update?
Sure. So with the Minnesota funding update with the $60.4 million, which is the total Minnesota request, we have been down there. Representatives from the Minnesota side have been down there several times now with the Coalition for Greater Minnesota Cities, the Fargo-Moorhead, West Fargo Chamber, and also the League of Minnesota Cities, and I believe the coalition of, or the county, what is it, the county?
AMC, Association of Minnesota County.
Yes, that. So 4 times that Minnesota delegates have been down to St. Paul, meeting with several of the senators and representatives. Each time we've been able to meet with Senator Kupek, Representative Joy, and Representative Keeler. The Senate side has a bill. I don't have the bill number, so it has landed on the Senate side. We are still waiting for a House bill number and just trying to move it through. There have been conversations with the governor's office as well. Of course, the governor only put in $5 million in his initial budget for the entire state of Minnesota. And the funding, the budget forecast for Minnesota is not as much as we anticipated. So it's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle, but still hope that with our constant lobbying and explanation of that this really needs to be done sooner versus later so that the Minnesota projects are completed by the time the project is operational. Hopefully that will land well.
Yeah, I might want to add to that from the county side of things. We've had both Commissioners Mojo and Krabenhoft really involved down in St. Paul, and they've made a number of trips there regarding this particular project and a couple other things we got going at the county level as well. But I I think we're seeing what's being said in St. Paul, and where their forecast isn't the prettiest time to be asking, but we continue to talk about the importance of this project and the amount of people that it really helps protect, and so we'll continue to do that. And while I'm on that, I might just give a little bit of an update too on some of the county projects that are going on right now in terms of trying to coordinate these with potential funding from the state of Minnesota. I know we've had conversations with Jason and with our county board, and really what was being requested was to try to delay any bid letting on certain things that we had on plans till after the legislative session. Some of those things the county can make those decisions on, and some are basically those decisions need to be made by the watershed. So on this last Monday night, our county administrator, myself, and Commissioner Ebbinger did attend the Buffalo Red River watershed meeting, and we talked to them about how we're trying to correlate these projects along with timing for Minnesota funding, and on the more expensive Wolverton project, one of the positive things on that is they're not quite ready to go for bid anyway. They had hoped to go to bid this spring, but like some of other projects, when you're having to deal with the railroad and some of those other things, things get delayed. And so in discussions with them, they basically said that they're okay with these delays, and that the watershed engineer should be working with Jason Benson and Chris Bakigard and our county engineer as well to be looking at mapping out these timelines going forward in the future. Jason was also kind enough to attend one of our highway tracking meetings where we did talk about some of these things with our county engineer, and I think there were some things that were expressed in that meeting to Jason that maybe the diversion staff wasn't aware of, and that dealt with the timing of projects, and if you end up having two of these significant projects in the southern area, both end up being in the same year, it's going to create a significant detour on all of these people that we've asked to take their land from, and that just wouldn't be a good thing. So those are the types of things that I think we're all asking for cooperation and collaboration with, and I think we can do that. So, and I talked to Jason just before this meeting about one other thing, that we need to have somebody reach out with Comstock, and I think we'll be set then for at least till after the legislative session on when these projects will be done. And I don't have any more, if there's any questions of us. Okay, item number 8 is the land director position.
All right, thanks, Mr. Chair. So just want to provide a quick update. Obviously, we've been without Jody now for the last 5.5 weeks, and she's been working on a contract basis, dealing with predominantly some of the negotiation for some of these final land acquisitions. But my goal is that we work to get an updated position description done and get the position advertised by the end of the month. So so that way we can work towards having a new lands coordinator in position, or lands director in position by hopefully late May, early June, sometime. But with that, we also acknowledge that what Jody's job description, very focused on land acquisition, is going to change in this new position, because we've done so much of the land acquisition, and the job title, it's a lands and compliance director. And so it's going to have a much broader emphasis on compliance, both the environmental compliance as well as compliance with key things with, whether it's the Corps of Engineers, the MOUs with the cities, the townships, the counties, all those things. And then land, there's still going to be a land management component, and to a much smaller extent, the land acquisition and acquiring the flowage easements. So that's where I'm leading towards as I'm working to redraft that job position. But again, just wanted to let the team, this group, know that from the leadership standpoint, so that when you see that updated job description and advertisement, that you're not caught off guard of why aren't we hiring a person focused on lands. And it's not that we don't, we wouldn't do that if that was the priority, but that we know whoever we hire, we're not expecting that to be there just for the next year and a half while we finish all those lands transactions. We're expecting somebody that's going to be there for the long term, that's really going to have to be focused on compliance and making sure we're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's every year with all those requirements, from replacing a sign that gets shot up to, making sure that we're in compliance with Corps and FEMA regulations.
Chair Campbell.
Yes.
I was just going to say that I think that I just want to acknowledge that the change in job description, I think, shows progress. We knew that there was going to be a point in time where these positions would have to be transitioning over to more of a compliance of a position, and I think that that's very progressive and very forward-thinking and really smart to incorporate that into the job description. It can be kind of a pain to change it mid, right after somebody has started, after a year and a half, and we're so close to getting all of the flowage easements acquired, and I know the land has already been acquired for the channel, but we have to work on the southern embankment, and as we transition in 2027 to just hopefully only compliance, I think that is just a really good sign of progress.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I just want to make one comment going back to our current deal with Jody, and then we talked about what her role would be and the significance that that's still playing. And I want to speak to specifics to our last MCC JPA meeting. There was brought before us a settlement agreement offer that dealt with, I believe, was 13 different properties in Clay County that she worked really hard on in getting that done. And it was, it was her knowledge and her background and knowing about all of the other agreements that are done there really made that work. And we had an executive session on it beforehand. We came out of that executive session, and the MCC JPA board voted unanimously to support the settlement agreement. And that was a lot of work, a lot of hard work by a lot of people. And credit had to be given also to, and thank you to the landowners who also participated and ended up agreeing with that. So it took that out of court, which is the best way to go. So the investment into Jody is still good. So that's what I wanted to say. So, okay, anything else on land director position?
No.
Okay. Any other business this morning, or this afternoon? Mayor? Nothing? Okay. All right, Mayor and all three of them jump. Okay. All right, our next meeting is April 8th. And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion second. All in favor? All right, motion carried. We're adjourned.